Really, insurance companies don't have the patient's best interest at heart. They're not even pretending at this point. And so I really would like to have a more personal peer-to-peer connection with my patients going forward. And I think Bitcoin is peer-to-peer money. And what better way to have that?
Welcome to the Business Bitcoinization Show, the show dedicated to helping you enrich your life and grow your business with Bitcoin, the hardest money on planet Earth. I'm your host, Josh Friedemann, and our guest today is Ryan Wilson, who owns a dental practice in Michigan. This is going to be the conversation on Bitcoin and dental hot takes that you never knew you needed. But of course, before we get to that conversation, we do have this week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight. Even before that, thank you to those who have been supporting the show on Fountain in the last couple of weeks, including Camper, Zaresme, and No Waste BTC Signs, who streamed sats to the show, and Junior Duke 44, who sent 250 sats. And about the show with Gabe Newland from No Waste BTC Signs said, "Good show. I found Noster.cooking. I'll have to share it with my sister. Thanks for the info, fellows." If you would also like to support the show on Fountain, you can listen on the app and either stream sats as you listen or send a boost. And if you include a note with that boost, I'll be sure to read it on the show. Now, this week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight is the Louisville Bitcoin Network, the Kentucky Derby, Louisville Slugger, and a Bitcoin-only meetup. What more could you want from the home of Muhammad Ali and Jennifer Lawrence? The Louisville Bitcoin Network is a Bitcoin-only meetup for those in the greater Louisville and southern Indiana area. The format is light, casual, and family-friendly. And they've recently added a BitDevs. No previous Bitcoin knowledge is needed. It's fun for newbies and OGs. They meet the last Sunday of each month at 3 p.m. at the St. Matthew's Library. You can find out more on their website or on Twitter at KentuckianaBTC. Those links are down below, along with a link to the Oshi app, which you can use to find a Bitcoin meetup near you. Now, we're going to get to our interview with Ryan right after this. Business owners, unlock the benefits Bitcoin has to offer your business with the Bitcoin for Business Quick Start Guide. This 27-page guide highlights the 6 ways you can grow your business with Bitcoin. Check it out in the show notes. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to talk about our office and Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I like to start off every single interview with a few questions that help us to get to know you a little bit better and give us some insight for our own lives. So you ready for these?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Question number 1 is this. When and how did you first learn about Bitcoin?
It was early 2017, before the bull run of that year. And I just kind of got interested in some of the technology aspects of this magic internet money. And I started reading about it and doing the best I could, like learning. I take a lot of classes, like continuing education classes and professional development. And those all cost money. And I viewed, my first entry into this as a sort of an admission fee or a price of learning about what it is. So after that, I dove right in, and I early on recognized the concept of self-custody and how important that was. So early on, I was playing with, custodying my own Bitcoin right away. I probably spent more on hardware devices than I was actually securing at the time, but it was all part of the learning process for me, and that's how I got going.
So I don't tend to ask too many follow-up questions in this, these initial 5 questions, but I'm curious about 2 things. First of all, with your experience with self-custody, all working with hardware wallets and things like that, is there one now that you feel like is just a great option, either your favorite or one that you think more people should consider?
Yeah, I really enjoy the cold card. I have a Q, the newest version, also the MK4 and the previous version to that. But I think they're pretty easy to use. I don't think they're difficult to use. I know a lot of people complain about that, but I feel they're really secure and it's worked out well for me. So I'm really excited about the Q because I love the QR scanning. There's a lot of neat features. I love verifying that the address actually belongs to my wallet. So that's what I'm using the most of right now.
Yeah. Then the next thing is you mentioned that you got in before the 2017 bull run, which is, it had to have been a rush.
It was.
Did it just terrify you whenever you ran to the next bear market?
No, it didn't actually. I knew that this was the thing. Like by the time we got to the bull run, I knew this was a thing that was going to stick around and wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't really worried about it. In fact, I used that bear market time to buy some more. I thought that was a good opportunity to further enhance my position. And I wasn't worried about it. I'm still not. I watch the price, I pay attention to it, but that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah, sure. Question number 2, what's an insight or fact about Bitcoin that you wish everyone understood?
I think this is something new that I've come to. So I think that you can use it to transact with, like on a regular basis. Certainly holding and self-custodying and keeping your own Bitcoin is a very valid use for it. And that's great. And that's a lot of what I did. But now there's a lot more use cases for it. I mean, if you're a merchant, consider accepting it. If you're a business, consider accepting it. And if you are a Bitcoin person and have some Bitcoin, seek out places that you can use it or spend it. I think that really truly opens, your eyes about how magic internet money works, like how it actually works. How do you use it? How do you store it? How can you transfer it from one person to another? So I think that's a big thing that I think I wish people learned more about or did more often.
Question number 3, what's the Bitcoin resource you most recommend to other people?
So this has changed a bit. So when I first started, I was really, there's a lot of good books, there's podcasts, there's a lot of reading, there's videos. But now I got to say, hands down, the best thing is going to be your local meetup. We have a great meetup here in Grand Rapids, and the people are phenomenal. And wherever you are in your journey, whether you're just interested in hearing about it, whether you're experienced, you've been into it for a long time, there's always something to take away from these meetups. The people have all great perspectives. And I think if you really want to level up and accelerate your learning, is get to a local meetup. I think that's the best thing that I can recommend for everyone.
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. Question number 4, beyond Bitcoin, what is a resource, tool, or idea that's been helpful to you or your practice recently?
This was a pretty easy question. So it's got to be our team and the office personalities in our office. My wife and I have worked together for 20 years. And it works great for us. And she's a huge support for everything I do and a huge part of the office. And then our team and our staff, I mean, they are the backbone of the office. They help us out so much. They're so supportive. Most of them have been there a really long time, and they're invested in the office. And honestly, none of this stuff would be possible without them. So that's been a huge, I think people are often overlooked, but man, our people in our office are top notch.
Now we have our final, what we call our arbitrary but insightful question, and it's this. As a general life principle, is it better to ask why or why not?
I'm pretty clear on this one. Some of your guests have hedged both ways, but I'm pretty clear in the why category. So really, for me, I think to truly understand things and to really connect with it, I've got to understand why. So it's simply why, like why are things, why does it work, that stuff. And once you have that, then I feel like I got a good handle on things. So I'm very clearly in the why category.
Meet Linkster, your premier Bitcoin-focused advisor. Linkster caters to businesses, institutions, family offices, and high-net-worth individuals. They merge your unique financial goals and needs with Linkster's Bitcoin expertise to craft your own sustainable plan to preserve and grow the value of your hard-earned profits and retained earnings. At Linkster, it's not just advice, it's tailored execution. Connect directly with the founder by visiting linkster.com. That's LYNCSTER.com. Linkster. Secure your future with Bitcoin. Today's episode of Business Bitcoinization is proudly brought to you by Velis Commerce, where the future of business technology meets Bitcoin. As we journey through the era of Bitcoin and its transformational impact on businesses, there's one name that stands out. Velis Commerce. Whether you're looking to build a cutting-edge website, a seamless mobile app, or custom software, Velis is your go-to team. They've been diving deep into the world of Bitcoin since 2014, making them one of the most experienced groups for integrating Bitcoin and Lightning payments into a variety of digital platforms. But here's what truly sets them apart. Velis Commerce doesn't just build. They bring a wealth of knowledge to ensure your project's success from day one. Their team understands the nuances of Bitcoin, ensuring that your business stays ahead of the curve. And for all business Bitcoinization listeners out there, Velis Commerce is offering a free consultation to kickstart your project the right way. So if you're ready to future-proof your business in the coming age of hyper-Bitcoinization, head over to veliscommerce.com or reach out on Twitter at veliscommerce. Let's make sure your business thrives in the Bitcoin era. Well, Ryan, we're here today to talk about you and your practice. Recently, I was talking with John Gordon. He introduced us.
Yes.
And he was saying that you are now accepting Bitcoin in your business. So I wanted to talk with you about that, how the experience has been. Maybe before that, even just a little bit about your practice, how you got started,
Sure.
and some of those background details as well.
Sure. So, my wife and I are both dentists. Like I said, we've worked together for 20 years. I graduated dental school in 2003. And we took over a small practice in Rockford, just a suburb of Grand Rapids, right outside in Michigan. And it was very small. We just had 3 rooms. We had 3 people working for us. And we expanded it ever since. So we have 11 employees now. And we are much, much larger. And like I said, we've been working together. My wife and I work together all the time, and it's just grown from there. We're a small family practice. We tend to see a lot of families from the area. We don't really specialize in one thing or another, but we kind of a general dentist. We are general dentists, so we kind of see it all and do it all.
What was the impetus for accepting Bitcoin? You've been in it since 2017. You're a seasoned veteran in Bitcoin years. Have you just recently started accepting it, or have you been thinking about it? Kind of like, how is that? What was that development like?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I just, even though I consider myself fairly technical, I just didn't have all the pieces that I could put together and start accepting it. John from Satoshi Health Advisors was really great in helping me put everything together and finalize the missing pieces to actually implement it. Let's just go live and let's start doing it. Like I said, it's only been a couple months that it's been officially accepting it.
And what's the response been? You did mention earlier that you have, you at least advise people to check out their local meetups. I'm guessing you have a great one there.
Yeah.
Have you found that people from the meetup have come? Has it been a good conversation starter for people who aren't Bitcoiners per se?
Yeah. So can't really talk about it's HIPAA. I don't want to violate who's coming or not,
sure.
but yeah, I think that is. I think I want to attract people that are, like-minded. That have that sort of a load time preference, and I want to attract that. I want to start the conversation and raise awareness too. I also want to walk the walk. I mean, I talk about it and have been talking about Bitcoin, and people ask, well, are you using it? And I want to have an answer. Yes, I am using it. Like, I am using it. We are accepting it. It is a valid, way to transact. And I want to put that out there for everyone to see and use. So yeah. We haven't gotten a huge response yet. So I think it's if you look at the amount of population who actually uses Bitcoin, how many of those fall into our practice? So we haven't gotten a huge response yet, but I'm optimistic.
I think that's the experience of a lot of people. It does seem like, we don't need to get into talking about politics on this episode, but it does seem like there are more politicians these days, even presidential candidates, talking about Bitcoin. So in addition to it appearing to be in the middle of what we hope is a very strong bull market, there are, in addition to the price run up, there will be politicians talking about it. I think it will enter much more into the public consciousness. So I feel like this is a really good time to be doing it. You've also written an article, and I'm curious to know, I think it was, I forget exactly what the publication is. I actually have it pulled up right here.
Dental Economics.
Dental Economics, which is kind of an interesting publication. But how has this idea and your article, which is entitled Bitcoin and Dentistry, the Future of Money, how has that accepted? And are there other people who are beginning to think similarly to you, or are you still very much an outlier?
I think I'm still an outlier, but it has raised some awareness. So I do get people contacting me from the article. I haven't been, about my thoughts on different things. And it hasn't been like, how do I do this? That we haven't gotten there yet. So there has been a lot of questions about some beginning technical questions too. So like, I'm a dentist. I saw your article. I'm interested in Bitcoin. Where do I start? Some things like that. So I think that's been a success. But I think the more people that use it and start to become involved with it, I think that's going to be better for everyone.
Now, you wrote this back in November, and I think it's just been. Were you accepting Bitcoin back then?
No, I
or
was not. Yeah, that was
Okay.
So that's pretty much when I made the decision to do it. But I couldn't get the last little moving pieces together. So John was really helpful for that to get everything going.
Yeah.
So.
How do you think about holding it on your balance sheet? Is that something that you would intend to do as you receive it, hopefully more and more in the future, just holding it, or is it more advantageous at the moment for you to cash it out and use the USD value for operations?
Nope, I'm absolutely going to hold it. I think that's pretty clear. And if there are any vendors, or if there's anything like maybe a dental laboratory that we use would accept Bitcoin, I would really consider, transacting in that way. I think that would be a great thing to do. I don't see any of the main suppliers getting on board, but some of the smaller vendors and things that we use, they might do that.
Now, what is it that you do in your office to let people know? Or maybe not even in your office, just in general to kind of spread the word? Was it through email? Do you have a sign up? What exactly does that look like? I think it's helpful, especially for people who have the brick and mortar stores, or they have different, medical practice, whatever else it might be. What does it look like when people are actually coming in, interacting? How do you inform them that you're now accepting Bitcoin?
So a lot of patients have brought it up to me. So they saw, I guess we started off. I put a post on our Facebook page, which is kind of a generic way to do it. I try not to inundate people with extra letters or texts or stuff like that. So I decided not to do that. But right next to our Visa MasterCard logo on the door, I did put a Bitcoin accepted sticker there. So that has raised a few questions, and people have talked to me about it a little bit that way. But I hope that I hope that more and more people will get on that and start that conversation. And maybe if they're not familiar with it, maybe they're going to take the next step to learn about it themselves. They're like, oh, my dentist is using it. What can I do about that? If I've heard about it, maybe that'll encourage them to take the next step to learn about it themselves.
Do you know of any other local businesses in the Grand Rapids area that are accepting Bitcoin?
I just made a connection with a self-storage owner. So they have a self-storage facility, and they accept Bitcoin. There's a mobile mechanic in the area that accepts Bitcoin. There's an ophthalmologist that accepts Bitcoin, a screen printing business. So there's quite a few in the area that have come up.
Are you at the stage where if you were to frequent those businesses, and some of those are kind of like specialized, you would only go there if you had a very specific need, but would you consider spending your Bitcoin at one of those places? Like there's just that balance between, do we spend it? Do we hold it?
Yeah. So my wife knows the pizza story. So she's, 10,000 Bitcoin for a couple pizzas. So she's like, I bought a few things and, from local meetup members. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's going to cost us $1 billion in the future or whatever. So no, I would actually spend it, but I do feel like I would replace it. So I that's kind of my strategy. I really want to use it, and I will use it anywhere that I can. But I'm not going to let my stat go down. I want to keep that up.
There's an account that at least people who use Twitter or X will know of called Wicked Smart, and the person behind the account talks about how you want your value in Bitcoin to always be rising. So like you may buy stuff, but you want to make sure that your net worth in Bitcoin continues to rise. I think that's a good metric to begin thinking.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think it can be hard to do that and switch that mindset, but increasingly I think it will become more and more natural for people. So have you had anyone come in who's been a little bit cynical or kind of been poking jabs at you for accepting Bitcoin, thinking that it's sort of a silly thing for a business person to do?
No, that's a great question, but no, I have not had one single comment about that at all. But I think that the people that I talked about it too, I've kind of brought up this peer-to-peer concept. I mean, Bitcoin really is truly peer-to-peer, but I think in healthcare, we've gotten away from a lot of that. Like the patient, provider connection has been missing a lot. And, that's kind of what one of my talking points is. I really feel like I want to eliminate some of the middlemen and eliminate some of the distractions and really have a good communication and transparency amongst my patients. So I got a quick story. I don't know if we have time, but
absolutely,
all right.
Got time.
So a longtime patient, family. They've been family. I've watched their kids grow up, and they came into our office, and the mom came in, and she had a cracked tooth, and I noticed it, and the tooth was cracked. I let her know what we need to do to fix it, and we fixed it, and everything turned out great, and we're all good. But her insurance company denied; they didn't pay for it. And so I wrote a letter. I attached my documentation, my photos, the x-ray, and it explained everything and sent a letter, and they denied it again. So then I wrote a more detailed explanation and all that stuff, and they denied paying for it a second time. Mm. And so the third time I asked for, I wanted a phone call. I wanted to talk to one of the insurance company's dentists. I wanted to explain myself, and I wanted to, say what was, why I did what I did, and get an answer to why they didn't pay for this. And so I started off, and the dentist, we talk, and I had all my stuff. I even had like scientific papers cited, and I had my photos and before and after, and I started going through this stuff. He's like, stop. He said, you did everything perfect. He said, you did everything textbook. He said, you did everything the way anybody else would have done. And I said, so what's the problem? What's the holdup? He says, that patient's insurance company doesn't pay for asymptomatic fractures. And they had a clause. And because she didn't complain about it, and I can't falsify that. I can't say that She didn't complain about it. They denied the claim. And I said, what if I didn't wait? If I did nothing, and the tooth would have fractured, it would have had to be removed, all this stuff. And that's when it really I lost that. That was the clear sign that really insurance companies don't have the patient's best interest at heart. I mean, they, they're not even pretending at this point. I mean, that clearly was not the best treatment I did the best treatment for the patient, but they were not involved in that. And so I really would like to have a more personal peer-to-peer connection with my patients going forward. And I think Bitcoin is peer-to-peer money. And what better way to have that? That's been a big talking point for me.
And that sort of raises a common theme that I've seen across a couple other interviews with doctors. They want to have that closer connection. And so they change their model for how they run their business. And I always ask, the last two at least across 8 months or so, I've asked a question that I'd like to pose to you now, which is, what is, and this may or may not be as applicable to the world of dentistry, but what is something that is commonly practiced now that in the future we're going to look back on and be like, I can't believe we were doing that? And then the second part is, what's something that's kind of viewed as far out now that will be common practice in the future in your estimation?
So the first part, I think that there's a lot of, and again, it goes back to insurance companies, and somehow they created these intervals for things. Like they will allow 2 cleanings per year, or they will allow x-rays certain sites x-rays every 12 months, or another one every 5 years, or these intervals. And I think that going forward, those intervals will probably go away. And I believe in a more customized approach. Like some people will never have a cavity in their life, and they just don't. And those people don't need maybe x-rays as frequently, but other people could go every 6 months and have a new cavity here or there or 4 or whatever. So therefore, a more frequent interval might be better. Some people struggle with gum issues, so they can't handle just 2 cleanings a year. They would need more frequent cleanings than every 2 a year. So really dictating the personal treatment for each individual patient, I think is going to be, and it's something I try to do now anyway, but I think that's going to be a thing going forward. And the other question was, what, or could you rephrase it again? What was it?
And so, the second question is, what's something that is kind of viewed as far out there or a little kooky now that you expect to be more common practice in the future?
Sure. So I think there's two parts about that. And I think that AI has come into dentistry pretty strong lately. And it's pretty interesting. But I think going forward, I think it's going to be like good or bad. I think there's some good parts to it, and I think there's definitely some bad parts about it. But I think that that's going to be going forward. I think that's going to be a lot more commonplace. And I also think there's going to be a lot more remote or telehealth type things going forward. I haven't really dabbled with that much, but during the pandemic, that became pretty popular. And I think that going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think we do see it in primary care more now, but I think we're going to see more of it in dentistry in the future.
I can't imagine FaceTime getting close-ups of what's happening inside someone's mouth.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are all sorts.
Yeah. Some people are actually pretty good photographers. They can take some pretty good photos and send it in, and we can see what's going on.
So how is AI being used right now? Is it to identify cavities and things like that?
Yeah, it is. And I don't, there's a few big companies and a few big players, and I haven't investigated that much, but basically you could feed x-rays into AI, and then it'll highlight certain areas that, might need a closer look or follow up. So it can identify beginning cavities, or this is truly a cavity. That can identify bone level, as this person had some gum disease issues in the past, things like that. So I think that may go along with some of the telehealth things, that maybe there may not be a dentist involved. Maybe there'll be more of a mid-level provider where the x-rays are taken, kind of fed into an AI thing, and then see what kind of spits out after that. Now, I don't believe it. I don't think that's a good thing. That's not the way I want to work. That's not the way I envision my practice ever doing it. But I think that could be a thing in the future.
I'm curious if we can get any additional, let's call it dental alpha from you today. I think a lot of people know the basics. Whether or not they actually do them is a different thing, but brushing twice a day, flossing, not eating as much sugar. Are there any things that people listening to this podcast today who are probably interested in optimizing different areas of their lives, different things that they could be doing that could improve their dental health that may not be immediately obvious?
Yeah, so I think a big thing that I'm seeing a lot of lately, and this is, I've been in practice 20 years, and I've never seen any of this until fairly recently, but we're actually seeing a lot more constricted arch forms. So people are like, everybody knows that your wisdom teeth can become impacted, and they don't erupt it fully to the mouth, and they're not functional. We may have to remove them. But I'm seeing some kids, when I say kids, I'm talking like 16, 15, 14, 13, that literally don't have room for their second molars now. So those usually are up to around 12 years old. But now I'm seeing 14, 15-year-olds that don't have, the second molars just are not coming into the mouth. There's a multitude of things that I think are causing this. A lot of it is just theory. But I think we really need to pay attention to children's airways when they're young. Make sure they're having enough room to breathe through their nose. And then also, I think sometimes our diet, we have a really soft modern diet these days. And I think without a lot of proper chewing, development of those muscles and structures as the kids are developing, I think that's causing a lot of this too. Breastfeeding, I think, is really important for not only nutrition, but I think the way that the infant's nurse develops the muscles in the face a lot differently than they do from a bottle. So we're starting to see some changes. Like I said, I'm seeing it before my eyes. I never saw this before. And I had my first patient. I'm like, oh my gosh, now this patient is 16 years old, and now they have to have their third molars, their wisdom teeth removed, and now their second molars removed. And they just physically don't have the space for that. So I think some early intervention or early awareness of airway issues for children going forward is going to be key.
Now, I recognize I may be in danger of losing listeners because of my own interest here, but I've seen a lot more recently about tongue posture.
Sure.
Does that connect to what you're saying?
Yeah, It absolutely does. And I don't know enough about the myofascial, like what that does. And some people could try to retrain their tongue and do different things. So I don't know enough about it, but it's that stuff that happens early on that affects the facial growth later. So if there's some really interesting videos about how infants nurse on the actual breast and what that looks like, and their tongues, how it works. And then you look at the similar thing on a bottle and it's different. And so that only, all those things add up. It's not one thing or the other, certainly doing one thing or the other is not going to change, all that. But I think those combined, the combination of less breastfeeding, airway issues, soft modern diets, all contribute to this sort of change in facial bone structure that we're seeing these days.
Yeah, I think this is perfect stuff. I think this is, people want to know how they can improve. I think especially Bitcoiners want to know how they can improve. So this type of stuff, especially if you're kids, can be really valuable. Personally, I can say that as I've focused more across the last maybe year or two, breathing through my nose, especially when I sleep, I've gotten sick less. I don't, obviously don't wake up with a dry mouth and nasty breath. And so there are a lot of benefits. And I'm sure those go back to dental health as well.
Absolutely, 100%. So when your mouth dries out like that, the saliva has a lot of anti-cavity, anti-gum disease properties to it. But if your mouth is dry, it's not protecting, it's not remineralizing, it's not protecting your teeth and your gums. So that's a time where, especially if you had any residual carbohydrates, that are in there that didn't get brushed or cleaned off, that gives the bad bacteria a chance to just go to town and cause decay. We see it a lot, especially in elderly patients that have reduced salivary flow, either from medications or other things. Boy, all of a sudden they start to get rampant decay, and it's just a real struggle to try to keep up with.
I appreciate those insights. I think they will be helpful to
this
a number
stuff is super
people.
Fun too. So I'm a dork.
Well, so I think maybe one final thing before we get to closing thoughts would be, what are you using right now when it comes to Bitcoin in your business? I think you're using ZapRight.
I am.
Are there any other services that you're using or that you would recommend to people?
Yeah, I'm using ZapRight, and for us, it's a perfect fit. It fits into our online processing flow that we've done, forever. So patients could pay their bills online, and boom, they just go right to ZapRight. And I actually give them three choices. They can pay with a credit card, they can pay over Lightning, or they can pay over with Bitcoin on chain. So on the back end of that, I am using a custodial wallet for Lightning, just because I don't want to deal with inbound liquidity and things like that. So I do have my own routing node, and I do run a node. I may decide, it kind of violates my self-custody thing there a little bit, but it's only short term until I can move it off. But
very cool. And any final thoughts before we finish up today's episode? I really appreciate all that you've shared today so far.
Yeah, no, I think that the key highlights are definitely, if you're interested at all, no matter where you are on your journey, seek out a local meetup. I tell you, our local one is great, and they've done more to help my Bitcoin journey or grow it than all the YouTube or books or no offense, but podcasts, all of those things. I think so that in-person interaction is great. You get different perspectives, you get different ideas, you get a spot to ask questions. I think that's super good. And then also get out, and if you're holding Bitcoin, that's great. Like I said, that's a wonderful thing to do with Bitcoin. That's great. But don't be afraid to use it. Seek out some merchants that are accepting it. Buy something with it, spend it, but don't be afraid to replace it either. But go out and use it. And I think that's how you really get to become familiar with Bitcoin in the use case of it.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been great.
Well, friends, it's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Business Bitcoinization Show. If you want to reach out to either me or Ryan, you can find those links down in the show notes. And if you have a dentist in your life who you'd like to accept Bitcoin, send this episode to them. As always, keep building, keep growing, and until next time, keep living and leading well. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, thank you. If you want to take a further step in your support for the show, you can help us grow by listening on Fountain, a value-for-value podcast app on iOS or Android. If you hear something you like that you disagree with or anything else, you can share it by sending some sats and adding a comment with your thoughts. Some of you have already done this, and I appreciate it. I'm going to begin reading your boosts on upcoming episodes, so if you have some insight or value to add, let the people know. Getting started with Fountain is easy. You can add Bitcoin to your Fountain wallet by using your fiat accounts or any Lightning wallet. And one of my favorite features is that once you're using the app, you can earn sats just by listening on Fountain. Check out the link in the show notes to get started with Fountain today.